Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Hope everyone is fine. Dear students, today we are going to talk about SSH fundamentals and then we will do SSH configuration. So, first of all, you will try to understand why you should replace Telnet by SSH, why you should use SSH for your remote management. So once we understand the importance and the concepts of SSH, then we will try to configure SSH. So today's lecture is very much important because the SSH is one of the very important thing that is a network administrator or technician you have to do after buying a new switch or after adding any switch to your network. Okay, because once you add the switch to your network, you will configure that switch for further configuration or whenever for further troubleshooting when you want to do via remote management. So it means that SSH is a remote management tool and you will use the SSH to access your switches and do your further things. So let's go to the 4.2. Switch security, management and implementation. So dear students, when you take a new switch out of the box, the first thing the network engineer does is secure the switch and assign it an IP address. You know how to assign an IP address. We already assigned the IP address. We already secured the switch by defining the password, okay? And also learning the different methods used to secure a switch is important. Also important is learning the types of attacks that can be launched on toward or through a switch. By understanding the attacks and the available tools and countermeasures, a technician can be better prepared to secure the switch and make use of the tools and security commands. So it means that you have to first of all understand the concepts of switch security, and then you have to understand the possible vulnerabilities that, let's suppose if your switch is not secure, what kind of vulnerabilities will be available, okay? And then we will try to protect those our switches by using some tools and configuring some tools, okay? So today we are going the same. We will use first the SSH tool. We will try to protect our switch via the SSH. And after that, we will try to use port security to protect our switch ports, okay, from the unauthorized person. So let's first of all talk about SSH. Before this, dear students, you have to remember, for example, you have a network. Let's assume that it's a network. The network consists of 3 switches, and here is a computer, the management computer, okay? And let's assume that these are the user computers. Okay. Focus on the diagram because the diagrams will make the class for you guys more understandable and interesting. So see, these computers are connected with the switches. So it's our network, okay? These switches are connected with each other. Okay. This is your management PC. Management PC means the PC of the network administrator, okay? Or the network engineer. Because from this PC, the network engineer or administrator will configure these switches, okay? One of these switches. Guys, when you want to access this switch via the network or this switch via the network, so definitely you have to connect this computer to one of the network ports, and then these switches must have an IP address. This switch must have what? IP address. And then you have to use here PuTTY software, okay? You have to use PuTTY software. When by the PuTTY software, you will type the IP of any of the switch, and then you will be able to access. But in order to make this possible, you must use remote management tool. You must use what? RM stands for remote management, okay? Remote management tools. And you know, there are two available tools for the remote management purpose. One is called what? Telnet. Okay. And another is called what? SSH. So in the previous lecture, we complete what is Telnet. And today we are going to talk about SSH. Telnet and SSH is used for the same purpose, okay? The purpose is what? Remote management. But the drawback with the Telnet what? It's not secure. It is not secure, okay? Why it is not secure? Because the Telnet is unable to encrypt the data. The Telnet is what? It's unable to encrypt the data. The data, they will be unable to encrypt the data where? Over this transmission line, dear students. Over this transmission line, okay? The Telnet cannot encrypt your data. So what does it mean? It means that, let's suppose, if Zahid is working here, is a network administrator. So definitely Zahid configured this switch. Zahid already assigned IP address to this switch, okay? And the Zahid will try to access the switch by the Telnet. The Zahid have to type what? The username, their username, and their password. The Zahid have to type the username and password in order to access the switch. But let's suppose, if at the same time, Saif is a hacker, Saifullah, let's assume that he's a danger man, he's a hacker. So, okay, he will be here. And the Saifullah will try to sniff this traffic. The Saif will try to do what? He will try to sniff. Sniff means eavesdropping, okay? Reading someone data over the network, okay? So he will sniff and he will try to read whatever is inside this data. So when he will able to read, because the data is not secure, it's not encrypted, so Saif will easily find what is the username and what is the password and what is the password for the switch, okay? And once the Saif find the username and password and IP address of the network switch, so then you know he can easily access the switch and he can configure the switch for their own advantages. So that's why the Telnet is not using anymore by the network administrator. So this was the problem with the Telnet, okay? And you know, Zahid is a clever person. So he must use a tool which will protect this data from the Saif. So that's why the Zahid is now going to switch what? To SSH, because SSH will protect the data over this network. And then no one will be able to read it because the data will be encrypted. Is it clear? Dear students, if it is clear, please raise your hand or tell me, because you should understand the drawback of Telnet, okay? Then you will be able to understand SSH. Very good, Zahid, and very good, Firdaus, Saifullah. What about other students? Very good, Zabiul Haq. Very good, Habib. So it means you guys are, mashallah, active. Okay, so now let's try to understand that how SSH will deal this problem, okay? How SSH will deal this problem. So let me clear the Telnet related explanation. So now, okay guys, now focus. As I told you before, that SSH is what? It is secure. How it is secure? Because this data will be encrypted. Sorry, sir. Huh? Recording on there. Okay guys, focus. Let me check the recording. Is it on or not? Yes, recording is already on. Okay, I told you that SSH is what? Is secure. How it is secure? Because it's used encryption, okay? It's used what? Encryption. the data will be encrypted. Whenever the data is going to leave this computer, this data will be first encrypted, okay? And then they will travel over this network transmission medium. And now, if safe will try to sniff this, the safe will capture these packets or this data, okay? But the safe will be unable to read this. Why? Because they are fully encrypted. It is only possible to read it for the safe when the safe will successfully break the encryption. But in most cases, it's not possible, okay? So we understand that the SSH will protect your transmission or your data from your management computer, your PC, okay? So your switch. And now the safe will unable to read the username and the password of the Zahid. So what's become secure? Your important data becomes secure over the network. Don't think, dear students, that is they will protect the data of these computers or not. No, SSH is not about this, okay? So here you will use different protocols to protect the data of this PC and between the switch. The SSH is a remote management tool, okay? And we are talking about what? Management PC and the switch. So the thing is clear that SSH will use encryption, and based on encryption, they will protect the user data, okay? Let's go back to the presentation. SSH stands for what? Simple, SSH stands for secure shell, because it will provide you a secure shell between your management computer and the switch, okay? And if someone is thinking that, okay, is the switch will be only this switch? This switch, no, dear switch. The switch can be any switch, okay? If you enable their SSH, but you must enable in the switch what? SSH, okay? The SSH must be enabled in the switch. Okay, so SSH is a secure shell protocol that provides a secure, mean encrypted, command line connection to a remote device. Remote device is what? Switch, okay? In our case, it's a switch, but it can be any other device, okay? It can be a router, or it can be any other device which you want to configure, okay? Syed Mohib Rahman Hashmi, so tell him to add their ID. Then I will allow him. Okay, so how the SSH is secure? Because of strong encryption features. Because of what? Strong encryption features. So that's why SSH should replace Telnet for the management connection. As I told you before that no one is using Telnet because it's not secure. Everyone is using SSH because it's secure, okay? Dear students, let me tell you one thing more. This will be not always the case, okay? Sometimes the case can be also this, okay? Let's suppose if Zahid want to access their switches from their home, so then definitely he will come from the network. He will come from where? From the network. Network means internet. So in the case of internet, then he must use the SSH because there the security is highly important, because over the internet, when the data is coming, so in the internet, much hackers are living. Let's suppose this is the internet. And the Zahid is accessing their network while they're from their home by the network. So here a lot of bad people are living, okay? So you have to protect your data from the bad peoples, which are hackers. So then in this case, encryption is highly important, okay? For example, Zahid is working in a bank. Right now he's in their home. He wants to access the network for some configuration purpose. So definitely he will come to the network or from the internet. So anyone can access this session to read what he is sending to this network, okay? So this is, in this case, the SSH will become more important. Okay, guys. So we understand the further things. Now let's try to understand the port numbers which are using by the SSH and the telnet. Dear students, the SSH use TCP port 22. Okay, 22 is the default port of SSH, where the telnet is used 23 ports. Port mean what? These are logical ports, okay? This is what? Logical ports. And 23 is the number, okay? Number of the logical port. Because every single logical port have a number, okay? And the logical port will be used by who? The logical ports will be used by the network application, like SSH is a network application, Telnet is a network application. They will use logical ports in order to distinguish these ports from each other. So each port will have a different number, okay? So 23 is a logical port number. Because the TCP and SSH are the network application, they will use logical ports. Okay. Remember, dear students, that all these iOSs will not support SSH, okay? Whenever you want to make sure that is your iOS means the switch operating system, okay? iOS means switch internetworking operating system. So whenever you want to configure SSH, you have to make sure that is this switch iOS will support this or not. So for that purpose, you have to run the command show version, okay? You have to run the command what? Show version. And the show version command will display details of your iOS information. See, these are what? These are the details of your switch operating system information, okay? So when the information of your iOS will be displayed, then you have to make sure the K9 name, okay? So see here, there's a K9. If your Cisco software have K9 in their name, then it means your iOS support the SSH, just like see here, K9 combination. So these letters indicate that your iOS is compatible with the SSH, okay? And you don't need to worry about this because all the new Cisco switches and operating systems support SSH by default. But you have to run this command in case when you have a very old switch, definitely the old switch run old iOS, okay? And then there you have to make sure this. Okay, let's configure the SSH. Okay, let's configure the SSH. But dear students, before configuring SSH in your switch, you need to change switch default name and the default domain name. So how to change this? We can change this with the help of these two commands. Okay. So first of all, you should go to the global configuration mode. And in the global configuration mode, you will run these two commands. Okay. First, hostname. This is a command. The host name is a command where S1 is the switch name, okay? We will assign to our switch S1 name, okay? Then in the same mode, you have to run this next command, IP domain name. So this is the command, okay? The IP domain name is the command, and this will be our domain name. Domain name means your autonomous network name, okay? abc.com. It is required for the switch. So remember, it's a command. abc.com is something which we will define, okay? So you can assign any switch name instead of S1, and you can assign anything instead of abc.com because this is something which you will define, okay? But you cannot make any changes in this command, host name and IP domain name, because you have to follow the syntax and semantics of each command, okay? So this is the first step. Step number first, we are usual change what? The switch default name and what? Domain name, okay? We will do these steps, okay? But right now you have to just take notes that in the step number 1, you have to configure the switch name and the domain name, okay? And after this, you will run these commands, okay? But before running this command and explaining this command, let's go to the packet tracer and do this step number 1, okay? And I will also explain other things, and then we will come back and we will apply these commands, okay, guys? So I'm going to open the packet tracer. I'm sure you guys also have the packet tracer. Okay, you know how to add the devices, okay? So first of all, I'm going to add a switch. Let's suppose this is my switch. I'm going to add a PC. I'm going to connect the PC with my switch with a straight cable, Ethernet 0/1. And here you can plug it to any Ethernet port, not console port, okay? Because we don't want to access this switch via console port right now. So then you should come to your switch and you will configure the things, okay? Let me apply some use magnifier. Okay, guys, you can see my switch is up. So what is my switch name? My switch name is switch, okay? This is the default name. I have to change the switch, this name. So how I can change this name? I should go to which mode? Global configuration mode, okay? That's why you first type enable, then configure terminal. Right now I am where? I'm in the global configuration mode, okay? I have to run the command what? Host name, S1. See, S1 is what? This is the name which I'm going to define for the switch, okay? So after typing this command, you can see that my switch name is changed from switch to S1, okay? One thing is done. Second thing, I have to define what? IP host, IP domain name, okay? What will be my IP domain name? abc.com. So IP domain name command is also done. It means that my switch domain is now changed to abc.com. Before, the switch was not part of any domain, okay? So first step is done. Now go back to the other steps, okay? Don't worry, dear students. Why we are doing this thing? Because we want to configure, or we want to enable SSH in our switches, okay? Okay, come back to the slide. And now we will try to understand these commands, okay? Focus, dear students. Okay. First thing first, as you know that the IP domain name is changed. Good. Second, we should run this command. Crypto key generate RSA. What does it mean? This is very much important to understand. Dear students, as you know that SSH use what? Encryption. SSH use encryption. So let's try to understand the encryption a little bit more. Assume this is our session. This is our session, okay? Or you can say our channel. This was our management computer, and this was our switch. The computer is connected with a transmission medium with the switch, okay? we enable what? SSH. Okay. And you know that after the SSH configuration, our data will travel here in which form? In encryption form. Okay, our data will travel here in encryption form. Okay, they will be fully encrypted. The data will be encrypted. Okay. Okay, how this PC will encrypt the data and how this switch will decrypt the data, because you know, if Zahid type the username Zahid, this will be encrypted here, and maybe this will look like this, for example. Okay, this will look like this, etc. So is the switch can understand this? Definitely not. So then what the switch will do? So is this PC encrypt the message? The Zahid PC encrypt the message, okay? And this switch need to decrypt that message. The switch need to what? Decrypt the message. When the switch decrypt the message, then the data will become what? Again, the username, which was Zahid, okay? Zahid. If the switch don't decrypt this, the switch will unable to understand, okay? But the question is, based on what this will be encrypted and based on what this will be decrypted, dear students, for this purpose, they will the SSH will use what? SSH will use keys, not our lock keys, okay? Digital keys. This is called crypto keys. These keys will be what? Digital keys, okay? So we understand that the Zahid PC will encrypt the data and the switch will decrypt the data. Then the switch will be able to understand what is received, okay? And how these messages will be encrypted and decrypted. For this purpose, the SSH is using what? Keys. And now in this command, we are defining the key, that who will generate the key? Who will generate the key, okay? You can see here, crypto key generate. It means that we are specifying that what protocol will generate the key. Here is the RSA. RSA, okay, it's a kind of encryption, and we will use that encryption, and we will use this encryption keys for our encryption and decryption purpose, okay? So after running this command, then it will ask for the key length. It will ask for the key length, how many bits in the modules. You want to specify 512 bits key, more than this key, okay, or 1024 keys. Let me explain this. What does it mean? As I told you, dear students, that here what will be used? Digital keys. So definitely the digital key will be consist of what? Bits. The digital keys will be consist of what? Bits. And you know, some keys will have less number of bits and some keys will have more number of bits. It totally depends on the type of your encryption. Some encryption use smaller keys, some encryptions use bigger or larger key, okay? So in that time, when we will type the crypto key generate RSA command, and after that, they will ask for the length of this key. Remember, bigger key, strong encryption, and their decryption will become more difficult. Small key, decryption will be easy, okay? Or your encryption compromisation will be easy. So that's why remember, always use larger key, because decrypting a message which is encrypted based on larger key is impossible for the hackers, because they require much more resources to decrypt the key. So guys, we understand this, what does it mean? And now I will tell you that we will use 1024 bits key, okay? 1024 bits key. That's why here I type what? 1024. You can see here 1024, and you will accept. Once this thing is done, then you will do what? You will type the username and password, because you know, whenever you want to come via the network to your switch, you must specify who are you, your username, okay? And also you must specify your password, because every user have a key, a password, okay? So for that purpose, you have to create here the username and the password in the switch. Whenever the person will come from the management computer, so they will provide this username and password, okay? And then you have to specify the virtual teletypes, the line VTY. You know what does it mean, why line VTY, okay? In the telnet, we already discussed this, and you know, there we use the 0 up to 4. So here we will use from 0 to 15, from 16, okay? Sorry, 15. So it means that you are allowing 16 simultaneous connection to this switch, okay? Virtual teletype is a connection, is a virtual connection, okay? On this, a particular user will interact to your switch. Okay, then transport input method will be what? SSH. Do you remember? And the telnet is what it was telnet, okay? But right now it will be SSH because we are configuring SSH. Login local, so it means that the above information will be used for the login purpose to log in locally in the switch. And then you have to come out from the line mode, exit, and then you have to go back to, you are right now in the global configuration mode. Here you must specify the SSH version. So I will use IP SSH version 2. It have version 1, version 2, and recently version 3, okay? But in this switch, we will use version 2. And then exit, done. Your switch is now ready to be accessed via SSH from any computer. So after these commands, okay? Is it clear, guys? Any question in these commands? No? Well done, let's continue. Let's go back to the packet tracer and do our step 2 configuration, okay? Okay, so this is our switch, and right now we are going to do our configuration, okay? Can you see the packet tracer file? The packet tracer, my switch, S1. Okay, good. Okay, so first of all, I should type what? Enable, then configure terminal. Right now I'm where? I'm in the global configuration mode. Step number 1 is already done, host name and domain name. So now I should type what? Crypto key generate, okay? What will be up to our crypto key generate? RSA. Done. See, it's asking for the length of the key. So I will give them what? 1024. Then click on OK. So it's generating that. The key is not exportable. It means that you cannot copy this key to your USB or to any other port. It's not exportable, okay? So it's done. Now, what we do? We should configure, we should define username and password. Username, for example, username is Zahid. What is the secret? Secret will be, for example, ABC. Secret means password, okay? Then line VTY 0 to 50, okay? Then we have to specify transport input SSH, okay? And then login local. Okay, Let me compare these commands with this to make sure that is I'm right or not. Yes, so first of all, we specify the username and password, then we specify the VGYs, then we define the SSH input method, then we also run local, and then exit. Okay? We have to go out from the line configuration mode. Okay, exit and then IP SSH version 2. Exit. So now SSH is configured. Okay. So how to know that SSH is configured or not? Okay. Don't worry, for this purpose, here we have commands. We have what? We have commands here. Let me show you the commands how to verify that the SSH is successfully configured. Okay. Let's verify the SSH. You can the main verification from the PC, you have to open the putty and access the switch. But from the switch, you have to run this command, show IP SSH. Okay. And it will display this result. You can see SSH is enabled. Okay. And let me run this command in the switch. You should be aware in the privilege exe mode, okay? Show IP SSH. You can see here, SSH is what? SSH version 2 is enabled, okay? So it means our configuration is done successfully, okay? Now, we will go to the PC and we will assign IP address to the PC. But remember, dear students, one thing is still missing. We have not assigned IP address to the switch. Let's assign IP address to the switch, okay? And you know how to assign this IP address to the switch. Do you remember? Okay. Before that, I have to define enable password, enable secret, ABC, and then interface VLAN 1, IP address 192.168.1.1, okay? Subnet mask 255.255.255.0, okay? No shutdown. It's done. Let me see that the configuration is done successfully or not. For that purpose, I shall go to the privilege exe mode and show IP interface brief. So see here, the VLAN interface is up. 192.168.1.1. Status is what? Up. You know what does it mean, okay? VLAN 1 is what? Is our SVI, switch virtual interface. Now come to this PC and assign an IP address to this PC. So from the same subnet, okay? 192.168.1. I will use here 2. It's done. Now I should come to the Telnet and SSH client tool. So here I will select what? SSH this time, okay? Because I configure SSH. What was our host name and IP address? The IP address was 192.168.1.1. What was the username? Tell me, Shabash. Najat. Hello, Najat. Who will tell me what was the username?
It was Zahid, sir.
Very good. Okay. Zahid. Connect. See, the switch is accessing. This is the reply of switch. Okay, the switch is asking for the password. What was the password of Zahid? ABC. See, enable. What was the enable password? ABC. So it means that we successfully access the switch and our SSH is working now, okay? So IP SSH is enabled. So this was SSH, dear students. And remember, SSH configuration is a very common thing. Whenever you will buy a new switch, your first task is to assign IP address to your switch, define some passwords, and enable SSH. Okay, guys, so that's why you should do in your practice. You should run all these commands by yourself in your laptops to make sure that you guys learn and understand this thing. Okay.